Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 114 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network. I am your host, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict. With me tonight is Scott Sidlow at Scott_Sidlow. Scott, week 2 is in the books. How you feeling?
Dude, it's already week 3.
I
And
know.
Guess what? OBJ's catch was bested. And most of the country didn't even see it because it's on Amazon.
By
But
Mr. Hype Machine.
It was better. It was more difficult. And in my opinion, as a former wide receiver, it was a better catch. George Pickens. Let's go.
It was a fantastic. So the Hype Machine, now he's worth like 4 first, right?
I think he's up to 6 at this point.
Yeah. Maybe our guests can chime in on that too. I don't know what's taking me so long to get him on here. I talked to him on Trade Addicts, had him on Dynasty Game Night. Really smart guy. Love talking to him. John Arrington, better known as at DynastyCoachA on Twitter. John, how you doing tonight? And what did you think of that Pickens catch if you saw it?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and honestly, that catch was amazing. I think it's more amazing that he actually did something in a game because, like you guys said, the hype has gotten wild, and yet he's literally done nothing in the first 2 weeks. So it's nice to see that he's done something, but I wonder if that catch is going to bring that hype right back, and maybe it's a selling point for some people.
Yeah, he's still got Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett thrown to him all year. So
exactly.
But we'll get right into it. We are going to start with the news.
News and notes.
We only have one major piece of news this week. We don't want to get too much into the weeds with this stuff. We'll just talk about the major stories you kind of need to talk about, and that is Trey Lance. Everybody was excited to see him this year. He sat out almost all last year. And, of course, he gets injured, breaks his ankle, I think, in a couple places. And now we have our old friend Jimmy G back. So, John, how do you see this? Like, how do you see this for Lance going forward? And what's Jimmy G's price in the dynasty market right now, you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was pretty worried about Lance anyway. Not necessarily for like fantasy football purposes, but for NFL purposes. I was just worried that could he actually run an offense? And I've seen so many people come from the small schools and just completely fail. And he has a small school resume, but it's very small resume from a small school. And so I was always worried about that. The fact that he couldn't get on the field really, besides injury, reasons, year one definitely didn't bode well. And, the whole debacle with like them not trading Jimmy G and all that kind of stuff, obviously it worked out for the team,
Yes,
but it was just always weird. And people said, it's not because he's going to take his job or anything like that. I'm like, man, this is a business, like they kept him around for a reason. So I wanted to see Trey Lance get on the field. I wanted to see him succeed. I was hoping, I always hope for the best with these players, but man, I just didn't think that it was going to be great. I actually think that Jimmy G being here is actually better for the offense as a whole. Like I said, I think that Trey Lance could have put up fantasy points, but that's not going to help the entire offense, including Debo and Ayuk and whoever else and anyone that, any of one of the 9 running backs that end up running the ball in any particular game. So I think the Jimmy G can kind of help there, but even then, it's still a low volume passing offense. Like we saw what happened last year. The back half of the season, Brandon Ayuk got like 6 targets a game. Debo had about 5 or 6 targets a game and ran for like 60, 70 yards a game. It was all very weird, but I don't see it being very different. I mean, nothing's changed at this point,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said there, though. I think it's better for pretty much everyone in the offense except Trey Lance. That to have Jimmy G. At least we know what these guys are with Jimmy G too. We've seen it for the last couple of years. I was worried about pretty much everyone other than Debo, including Kittle, because I didn't know what this was going to be in a Trey Lance offense. But I had faith that Debo was going to have a role no matter what. I mean, Kittle's definitely going to have a role, but I was, like you said, low volume, but it could have even been lower volume, I think, if with all of Lance's runs. But
absolutely.
Scott, what do you think? You pretty much agree with that? And do you have if you were desperate for a quarter, or if you're selling Jimmy G, what are you trying to get for him? Because I think that's probably more likely in your case. I don't think you're buying. I know in you, I don't think you're trying to buy Jimmy G.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw him traded like a couple hours ago, and it's for a guy that spammed basically the entire league for a 23 second, and that seems about right. I mean, he's going to give you this year. I also made a trade for him like a few weeks ago with anticipation of Lance like sucking or Jimmy G just starting somewhere next year, because I didn't really, I have Allen and Mahomes. So it's just kind of like getting another quarterback that I could use getting thrown in on a trade. So, in that case, there's a bigger trade, so the value is really irrelevant. But a second right now seems to make sense for Jimmy G, and that's fine. I'd pay that if I need somebody. I'm perfectly fine with that as like my third guy, or if I have a rotation of guys at my second spot, I'm cool with adding him to it. As far as Trey Lance, it's basically the same injury as Dak, except not as extensive. So if we've seen Dak come back from it, the only difference though is, Lance needs to run for his value, right? He's not passing like Dak. So that would be the concerning part. From all accounts, from all the injury guys I listen to, they expect that there's no reason with this injury not to have a full recovery. So if you're a team that's playing for next year, or, if you're already rebuilding or productive struggle or whatever strategy you're doing at this point, if you can get a little discount on him, then it's definitely worth throwing out an offer. And sometimes, people lose a player like that and they don't want to just dump them like right away. So the kind of that value actually doesn't really tend to drop for a couple of weeks, or maybe as the season goes on, maybe the team that has him turns out to have a pretty good team, but now they're going, well, gee, if I just had somebody else instead of Lance, now they may be more willing to take that discount because now they're looking at a championship instead of worrying about getting the value for Lance. So it may not happen right away, but give it a few weeks, keep an eye on it, maybe reach out to the, whichever manager has him in your league, and, see if you can pull off a deal, or at least keep it in mind for the near future.
Speaking of which, I actually made a Lance trade this week. You can tell me if I got fleeced here, because I know definitely one of these guys has very little value going forward. May not even have value by the end of the year, but I did it anyway. I traded Trey Lance for Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin. How bad is it?
Are you competing?
I am. I'm very heavily competing in that league. Yes.
Okay. I don't hate it. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest Trey Lance fan in the beginning anyway, so like it doesn't really bother me getting rid of him. But at the same time, I'm not a Carson Wentz fan, which we'll probably get into here in a little bit.
We will be talking about him later, yes.
And then McLaurin is kind of looking like the third fiddle right now. So I don't know. It's obviously McLaurin is a good player. Like it could be a small sample thing, and he could be great this week, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, hell, I made a great trade, but yeah. Just the way things are looking, I don't know that I love it, but at the same time, I don't think you ruined anything, and you needed a QB, so yes. There's probably worse trades that you could have made too.
Yeah, I actually did have two other QBs, but one of them was Matt Ryan, who I like even less than Carson Wentz.
Yeah, so that's right.
I did want to get another guy in there, and the other thing with it for me was maybe you should be able to get more, but I'm not sure after the injury, but I'm very, concerned even going forward. Like when he comes back next year, he will have played like 4 or 5 games over the last 3 years or something like that. I mean, it's insane. Because even go back to college, he only played 1 game his last year of college. So I wonder, I mean, his value will have to go up as he gets closer, but I think I'm not sure it's going to rebound to where it was prior to like this season. Like, I think people are going to be much more questioning of him even than they were now, and worried about it and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure I'm getting that much of a value boost later. Maybe I could have gotten more now, but I figured what the hell. So we're also going to do a little strategy talk before we get into our player topic. But before we get into some dynasty strategy, Scott, why don't you talk about some grooming strategy? How about that segue?
Ooh, wow, look at that. I mean, I don't know, Rocky. Maybe leave those segues to me.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
All right. Well, let's okay. So anyway, as our loyal listeners know, at this point, we are now officially sellouts, and it's a wonderful thing because support for Dynasty Junkies is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, our Junkies listeners, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code Junkies. And that is true. It is worldwide shipping because we had that question. The very first thing, like within an hour of reading that, somebody asked us, well, do they ship to, I think it was England in that case, but I know we have a lot of international listeners. We've talked about that in the past. So it is worldwide shipping. So again, 20% off with code Junkies. So the Performance Package 4.0 has the Lawnmower 4.0. Okay. So that means it is version 4. All right. And I had literally version 1, which, was like the original, and it was still better than like anything I had ever used. So this one is even bigger, badder, and easier to use. And let's just say, hey, it does what it's supposed to do. So it also includes the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to keep it all together and bring it all with you wherever you go. The 4.0 is the trimmer, is the future of grooming and the best ball trimmer ever. Features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. And we do not want grooming accidents, especially in that general location. So that is a nice thing.
I wonder if there was testing done to confirm that was the best ball trimmer ever. Like, did they compare different ball trimmers?
I believe so. I believe this is proven. Absolutely. There's a study been done, and I believe Dynasty Nerds was the first study. But the two best things about it, in my opinion, is waterproof, number 1. So that's sweet. And then also it's the spotlight that's on there, because that's always the hardest thing. It's like, do you need to go like get your shop light from the garage and like bring it into the bathroom? And then your wife's like, what the hell are you doing? So it is nice to have a spotlight so you can see what you're doing. It is an amazing thing. And honestly, the thing I use the most is the Weed Whacker, the nose and ear hair trimmer. That thing's amazing. I did recently have surgery to fix my septum and keeping everything kind of cleaned up and trimmed and whatnot. It's super easy to use. It's fast. It's convenient. So that is an awesome thing.
Yeah, I was going to mention, even if you're not into the whole below the belt grooming thing, that thing's fantastic.
It really
there's nothing
is.
wrong with making the deodorant, making things smell a little nicer down there, even if you're not doing especially if you're not doing the grooming. So
yeah. Well, and as we go into this time, I mean, it's important. It's something. Now I live in Chicago, so I know in Philly it's pretty similar there with climate wise, right? Like when it's real hot, we're kind of taking care of things more. But like in the winter, maybe it's like you could use the extra coat, you know what I mean? But you still want to keep it nice for your extracurricular activities. So yeah, take care of yourself. Go to manscaped.com, get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with code Junkies.
Yes, make sure you use that code. It really helps us out if you do. But we'll get back to the show now. Again, talking some Dynasty strategy. What we wanted to ask, guys, just one simple kind of question we'll get into, and then we have a little bit of a player topic, is what are you doing with your Dynasty teams right now? John just had to sit there for a while me and Scott talked about balls. So, John, like, are you more in wait and see mode after only 2 weeks? Are you still actively trading a lot? I don't know how many leagues you're in, but 2 weeks in, are you making a lot of trades? Are you kind of just, let me see how good my team is, how bad my team is, and then maybe, a month in, 6 weeks in, I'll really start trying to make some moves?
Yeah, I'm in 24 leagues, and I have yet to make a trade in season. So week one was funky. If I'm sure you guys watched it. I mean, a lot of backups were scoring
Always.
touchdowns, and
Yeah.
and it was just weird. And I mean, that's what you expect, kind of. But then week two kind of fixed a lot of like questions and things like that. But I still think that there's a lot of people saying, like, well, who's this player and who's that player? Like, who are they really? As far as like my teams go, I feel like you should know who, like, what your team is for the most part. Like, obviously, like, somebody's going to be a surprise. Like, maybe you didn't think Drake London was going to, be a standout in, the first couple of weeks. And so now your team's a little bit better than you expected. Or maybe you thought, DJ Moore was going to be a, complete stud. And, now you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm starting off a little slower than expected. But you should have an idea of what your team was going to be before the season starts. 2 weeks isn't changing that for me. Like there's a couple teams where there's one team in particular where I'm 1-3 with the league median. So, I won 1 week against the median, but I've lost both of my games technically. And then I lost against the median in the second week. But man, I have a studly team. It's just things just aren't working out. I lost Keenan Allen week 1. I lost Julio Jones. I lost, who else? I'm trying, but regardless, like I know for a fact that my team is good. Like, there's just there's no doubt in my mind. I think it's just like rare, circumstance and like, bad luck for the most part for starting out the season. If I'm 4 or 5 weeks in and I'm still sitting there with like a below 500 record and that kind of thing, then yeah, it's completely different. But 2 weeks in, I'm not changing my mind from how I felt 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I basically agree with that. I'm not I basically had an idea of what most of my teams were, what I thought was a contender, what I thought was what I knew going in was definitely a rebuild, and this season was kind of playing for draft positioning. I'm kind of with you in that. I mean, I have made trades in the first 2 weeks here, but it's definitely been a little more wait and see. A lot of it's been more stuff coming into me. When you're in a bunch of leagues, you're going to get some trade offers, and I've played around with some of them, countered. Some of them were worthy of accepting. Occasionally, somebody will throw someone on the block. In one league today where I'm a heavy contender, we actually had a guy leave like 2 days ago or something, and this guy came in season and threw Cup on the block, and I worked out a trade for Cup. But this isn't a league I was planning on doing anything, but the guy just said it. I threw out what I thought was actually a little bit of a low ball offer, and he accepted. So that worked out for me.
Yeah,
so
that's tough to get Cup right now. So.
Yes. It was like a first, a second, which are going to be very late, most likely, because they're mine. And
you just got Cup.
Yeah, and I just got Cup, exactly. And I threw another player. Ramondre Stevenson. No, it was Isaiah Pacheco and Dalton Schultz. So I did give up quite a few pieces, but nothing that's gonna, break anything for me. So that's what I kind of done. Like I've seen that happen a couple times in chats and thrown out some offers, but I haven't been sending out nearly the offers that I did before in August. I was kind of ramping up for the season and sending out a lot of stuff, and I haven't done as much now. But what about you, Scott? Are you basically same activity level as usual, a little less, a little more? What are you doing?
So basically, I'm only trying to take advantage of anyone panicking. That's really the only trades that I'm making. But otherwise, Jordan McNamara, who does the analytics of Dynasty, he also has this guide that's called the Analytics of Dynasty Rebuilding Guide. And essentially, it's the first 3 weeks. After the first 3 weeks, you should pretty much know where you're at. And statistically, it's going to tell you where you're going to end up. Now, we did add one more week, I think, since this was done. I don't know if this was based on 17. I think all the research was based on, 16 games. But regardless, I think, 3 weeks is essentially, 25% of the season, so it's, almost anyway. I guess it depends if you're through week 13 or 14, however your league handles it. But essentially, it's a pretty good indicator of where you're going to end up. Obviously, there are outliers, like just exactly what John was talking about, right? Where he knows he has a great team, but he's just been a little bit unlucky. So in that case, it's not like you're just going to blow it all up. Like you're looking at it, you analyzed it, and you said, okay, yeah, I'm still one of the better teams in the league. My max points is good, my all play record's good. I just had some bad luck with the schedule, right? So really, I don't do anything until after week 3. And then after week 3, I start going through my leagues significantly, spending some time, not just analyzing where my team is at, but then where it relates to the league. And then I'm going to start making some moves because essentially, I have a lot of teams that could be kind of in the middle. And in the past, I tend to like rebuild those and just be like, well, if I'm 5th or 6th best, then I might as well just rebuild, right? But I think that's been wrong. I think because, once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen, right? So I'm putting a lot more towards competing, even if maybe they're not great. But if I know I can get in, but again, you have to look at your league and you have to know, if there 4 rebuilding teams already, then you're already behind all of them. So what's your best case scenario? You're going to finish like 7th or 8th. Well, so do you want the 106 or do you want a shot at winning?
Yeah.
So then at that point, I'm just going to go for it.
And it happens. I had a team last year where I was 6th out of 6 playoff teams, but I happened to have Amon-Ra, Rashad Penny, and Burrow on that team, which were, if you remember last year, were basically the playoff heroes, and they took me to a title on a team that had no right winning it. So
yes,
it happens.
That's right. That's what I mean. So all you have to do is get there. So after week 3, you should have a pretty good idea of where you're at. If you look around and everybody else kind of feels the same way, that could be an opportunity for you to rebuild too, because then you get ahead of those other teams that are rebuilding, or thinking they might wait till later to kind of see what happens. Like if it's just not it, you want to be like the first one to do it, because then you can start getting maximum value for your vets. So again, after 3 weeks is really where I start to dig in.
2 things I wanted to mention there. One, building off one of your points, or just kind of emphasizing one of your points, that it's definitely good to see how many teams are because I'm in leagues where there will be 4, maybe even 5 teams they're rebuilding, and at that point you basically are just trying to be 6th out of 6th out of 7 or 8, and you at least get that shot. And like you said, if 4 or 5 teams already are, you're way behind the 8 ball anyway. So like you said, take the shot at winning, and your chances are 75% that you're going to be one of those playoff teams anyway, if that many teams are rebuilding in a 12, especially in a 12-team league. So the other thing I wanted to mention is kind of the opposite of what you said. Like you mentioned, possibly, I think, buying if people are panicking. The one other thing I have been doing in the first couple of weeks is trying to sell guys that whatever. Like I managed to move 2 of my Julio Jones shares, which I was grateful for after week 1, before it was found out he was going to miss week 2. I got people. I think one I packaged a couple thirds with him for a second, and the other one was just a third. But I was just happy to get anything for him at that point. So even on contending teams, I was pushing some of those out, because most of those I wasn't depending on Julio to be a factor anyway. So yeah, that's the other thing. And I tried moving Cordaro after week 1, but that one didn't work out as well. But that's what I've been doing when I have been sending offers, mostly is trying to see if I can sell guys that have gotten a boost that I wasn't expecting. So, but we'll move into our main topic of the night, which is, everybody after week 1, and Scott, even last week when he hosted solo, kind of touched on a little bit. Everyone kind of does the overreactions to week 1, that kind of thing. But I think it's kind of useful to do it again, or at least maybe not overreact, but take a look at some guys after week 2. Especially, I like to look at the guys who, like, for me, we're going to get to them second, actually. We're going to look at some of the positive guys first. But what even means more to me is the guys who start off slow. And that tends to worry me more than I get excited about the guys who have 2 good games to start off the season. But when you get, even though it's still a very small sample, when you get that second data point, it makes things a little more interesting. We all knew OJ Howard wasn't going to have a good game too. But when you see a guy you weren't expecting to do as well, and I'll mention the first one we're going to get into here, which is Amon-Ra. Like everybody, he was a pretty polarizing during the offseason. A lot of people thought it was just because Hawkinson and Swift were out. Some people just thought he was a talented guy. I was kind of in the middle. I wish I had taken a firmer stand on him. but I hadn't. I was kind of wait and see. I wish I maybe now had bought some Amon-Ra, because I am fully bought in after 2 games. He's just commanding targets. He's got 12 targets a game through the first 2 games. He's looking exactly like the guy we saw last year. It's it's still fine for Swift. It's killing Hawk, I think, because Amon-Ra is getting all the targets all over the field. So, but John, what are your thoughts on Amon-Ra, and what were your thoughts 2 weeks ago on Amon-Ra?
I was kind of with you. I definitely wasn't out by any means. I mean, you could tell the guy had, talent and everything. I wasn't fully sold that the offense was going to click to the point of him being like a true stud and everything. And, was he going to have an elite share with everyone on the field? And so far, I mean, it's been amazing. So I think we're learning that he's just that good. And, I don't know that it's going to continue at this rate. I mean, I'm big on touchdown rate, which as we get through all these players, you'll probably figure out, because I'm going to talk about it, quite a bit. And he has a 17%, like 17.6% touchdown rate right now. So like, it's probably going to come down a little bit. Like I wouldn't expect him to continue at this rate, but it's not going to be that different. Like he's not at some like insane rate. Like some guys are sitting at like 50% right now because they just had a lucky week or whatever it is. And he's not there. Everything else looks good. All the advanced metrics that I look at, he's looking really good right now. I think he could take a little bit of a hit, like a very small hit, when Jameson Williams gets on the field and gets healthy, because I really love Jameson Williams as a talent. But I think we've seen now that he's good enough to where I'm not worried about him. And I'm kind of with you. Like I took kind of a middle stance, and that ended up with me not getting him anywhere. So now I'm kind of mad. I'm like, I probably should have gotten a couple, because I wasn't out. I should have gotten a couple, and then I would feel a lot better about myself right now.
And regarding the touchdowns, though, even without the touchdowns, like I mentioned, he's getting that volume. Like he's 17 for 180, which is 35 points. 35 points still puts him at wide receiver. I'm looking at Trade Addict scoring, because that's what I have up on my screen. But the wide receiver 17, 35 points would be. So even if you take away the touchdowns he has so far, he's just producing. And Scott, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked John, because I'm curious. I don't know if we ever talked about, on this show about Amon-Ra when I was on with you. Were you kind of in the middle like me and John were, or were you buying him this offseason? And what do you think he's worth now? Not what you would pay for him. What do you think he's worth in the market?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of those guys I liked enough coming out, and I had a handful of shares, but nothing crazy. I wasn't like all in on him. But it certainly wasn't like Kadarius Toney, where I was just like refusing to take him, even
yes,
no matter what.
Which looks smart.
Well, maybe we'll see. Until he gets traded to the Packers or something, right? And then
that's true.
We did the I'm pretty sure you're in this league, the CKC chat league that we did, the startup. And frankly, I was shocked that he fell to, I drafted him at the 8-11, and that includes rookie picks and Debbie picks. So, but just interestingly enough, the reason I bring it up is, number one, because I wanted to add some shares of him, and I'm glad I did, because this is one of them. But the next receiver taken was Darnell Mooney. Okay. And then a couple other players, Chase Claypool, DeAndre Hopkins, Kadarius Toney. Like those were like 3 of the next 5 or 6 receivers taken there over the next round or 2. And it's mind blowing to think this was just a couple months ago, right? Well, I mean, it was probably in like February or something, March, but I mean, just to think about how much it's changed in 2 games, right? But nothing's changed. We just saw him do it at the end of last year.
That's crazy.
I figured like he was gonna go way higher. Like it doesn't make any sense. So I was thrilled that he was there.
Yeah. None of us believed he would keep doing it though.
Yeah, I mean, no, not to that extent.
Yeah, right. That's what's crazy, is he has done it to that extent, that he's wide receiver 4 right now, which is basically about what he was doing the last 6 games of the season.
If you believe targets are earned, then you should have been in on him, because nothing has really changed. Like Jameson Williams isn't on the field. Yes, they drafted him, but he hasn't played. And like, okay, Swift is healthy for now, but Hawkinson basically hasn't done anything, unfortunately for us, Rocky.
Yeah.
But that's no different than at the end of last year when he wasn't there, because he didn't do anything then either, obviously. So, I mean, at this point, he's still the guy. Like, we saw DJ Shark have a decent game week 1 and then disappeared week 2, literally put up a 0. So, I mean, again, he's earning the targets. He's getting open. He's getting the ball. Like, we know what Jared Goff is. And sometimes it's those quarterbacks that are like just good enough, but not great, that they're going to hone in on the guys that are open, right?
Mhm.
Like Derek Carr, he's going to always find, Devontae Adams or Hunter Renfrow, whoever it is. It's not going to be Brian Edwards, because he doesn't trust Brian Edwards to go up and get the ball, right? And so that's why they trade him. Whereas you have an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes who can spread it around to 8-9 different receivers. That just sometimes it's the advantage of having a Jared Goff, right? Is let's find the guy who's open. Yeah, well, that's Amon-Ra. So thrilled about that for my shares for sure. And I think, at this point, I mean, I think they talked about, pretty sure it was on the DTC podcast, and I can't remember if they said what his value was in the calculator. I think was like a random 23 first, something like that. I think it should be
a single 23 first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it should be more, because I certainly wouldn't trade him for a random 23 first either. Which is crazy, but it's true.
I do have a few shares that I already had, mostly from drafting him as a rookie, and I would not sell any of them for a 23 first.
No.
I mean, maybe if I felt really certain it was like the 101 or 102 or 103, maybe, but that's hard to tell at this point. So one other thing I just wanted to mention too. I think you both mentioned in talking about Jameson Williams. This actually has me more worried for Williams than it does for when Williams comes back. They play different roles, but that's to me, when I love Jameson Williams coming out, because I thought he could be more than just that speed guy that's going to go deep. And now I'm worried he is just going to be that speed guy that goes deep, because they have Amon-Ra and they also have Hawk to play over the middle and things like that. So like I said, I'm fully bought in. I'm more worried about Jameson Williams coming back for Jameson Williams than I am for it hurting Amon-Ra. So, but we'll see how it goes. A couple of the other ones on here I had to put, because I got to take a little early week 2 victory lap. So one of my guys that I've loved all off season, and it's not because I'm a homer. It's just I saw a very nice range of outcomes for him. It's Jalen Hurts. If he could make a jump in that passing game, he's his QB1 in his range of outcomes, and right now he's QB4, I believe. He's got the completion percentage up to almost 70%, which I think people would have thought was crazy. And they probably won't stay there. But, through 2 games, it's at 70%. A lot of that's influenced by game 2. But he was very good in game 1. He started off with like 5 consecutive incompletions, not all of which were his fault. And then was like 66% the rest of that game. So, and he's just looking really good. If you watch that Monday night game, man, he was making throws I had never seen him make. He was seeing the field better. There was an incompletion to Goddard that was maybe one of the best passes he's thrown, where he read the linebackers, he got it over top of them, put it only where Goddard could catch it, and then Goddard didn't catch it. But it was a great throw, and that's what he was doing all game. Obviously, he's still got the rushing upside. He's averaging 73 through the per game, 90 I think in one, and 50 something in the other. And he's got 4 total TDs, but that's a little fluky too, because they had 3 rushing touchdowns after pass plays that ended inside the 5 basically in that game, in that first game. So again, I'm very happy as an Eagles fan about what I'm seeing, because from a real life perspective, he's looking great. But fantasy wise, I just think I drafted him in the first round in SFB, because that's what I was thinking. If he can figure it out in the passing game, he has the potential to be like a Lamar break fantasy type of guy, and I'm hoping we're seeing the beginning of that. But Scott, I think you've been a little bit of a detractor of Hurts. So where are you at on this? It's only 2 games, or are you buying in?
So I'm buying in. So here's the thing: is where I acquired most of my Hurt shares was as a rookie. and it was, second, third round rookie pick.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I was willing to take the profit, right? I was willing to sell and do something else with my roster. But there's certain times where I decided to hold, and one of them is a league we're in together where I really should trade the quarterback or maybe 2 quarterbacks because I have
and
a
I've been
bunch of
trying
guys.
to get him off of you. I was trying to
And
get him off you all summer, and you would not give him to me.
well, and I really if you offered me what you offered me, because it was Swift and something else, if you had offered me that like a few months ago before I already sold like 5 or 6 Hurt shares, I would have accepted. The only thing is, in that league, I have Josh Allen, right? So he's like my anchor. So now I look at that roster and I go, I have the best quarterback in the game. So if Hurts now hits that potential, now I've got basically 2 top guys, right? Maybe 2 top 3, 2 top 5,
Possibly
2 top 2 guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's killer. And so I just said, in this case, I'm willing to roll with him because like if he doesn't make it, I still have Josh Allen, right? So like the risk is worth it. And so those are the type of rosters where I kept my Hurt shares. But yeah, what I've seen from him is him taking another step. And I think that the crazy thing to me is just a couple years ago, we were like, oh, wide receivers changing teams. We don't want anything to do with them. And then now we just see them all smashing like even last year too, even the last couple of years, we're starting to see that just become more the norm, like, because these guys are finally getting through that. Like, I know this guy, I have a relationship with this guy. We're going to work together off the field. Like, that's really important, right? Especially
AJ Brown is Hurts'
with
best
all
friend.
these rules and all the things that, they have to put in that extra time, right? If they want to be great. And you're seeing that. And yeah, the Hurts AJ Brown thing right off the bat was awesome. And then you saw Smith get involved week 2. So he's got the supporting cast, and knowing that offensive line is great. All those things. At some point you stem the tide and you say, okay, I'm going to hold on a few shares and let's see what happens. And yeah, I'm very glad that I did. He's for real.
I agree. So John, anything on Hurts, and then I'll also let you go right into, say whatever you feel, because me and Scott rambled for like 3 hours there on Hurts. So any other thoughts on Hurts, and then we can go to his former the guy that he was his former teammate Carson Wentz, who's also started off ridiculously hot, and let us know what you think of that start. I think a lot of us probably think that's fluky, but maybe you can tell us why.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of a similar situation, but like different types of players. But it's like I said before, it's the touchdown rate for me. Now with Jalen Hurts, he's on pace through 2 games for 25.5 rushing touchdowns. Just to put in perspective, he had 10 rushing touchdowns last year, and he scored a rushing touchdown in 5 games last year out of 16. So he's already scored in 2 games this year. That doesn't mean like next game he's due, for regression or whatever. But over the course of the season, we're not going to expect him to score 25 or 26 rushing touchdowns. So, I think that the ceiling's going to come down a little bit from what we've seen in the first couple weeks. And I don't truly believe that he's a 70% completion kind of passer right now.
Yeah.
So I think that he's
I
kind
do
of
think
playing
he's a better, more accurate passer than people think he is, though.
I think he has AJ Brown now. He has AJ. I think he has AJ Brown and he has Devontae Smith in his second year. That's going to be a step forward, regardless of anything else. I don't know that he's actually gotten better as a player. I mean, from what you watch him a lot closer than I do.
That's what I'm saying. I mentioned that Goddard pass. Even like he threw a ball to Devontae over the middle where the placement was perfect, and he picked up 10 more yards. We'll see if it bears out over a full season, but I do think he's more accurate.
I will say, like, his intended air yards are a little low, not like insanely low or anything like that, but that just could be the style of the offense where like they get it to their playmakers and then they let the playmakers do their thing.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a top 12 QB no matter what, and assuming health. But I don't know that he's going to be the QB1 or anything. But that's probably not what you're saying that he's going to end up as. So I'm in. I don't know that I'm in for like the long term or anything like that. I don't know that he's the guy that's going to get the Eagles all the way.
He's going to be the one. They're going to give him a contract. Just the way, again, if he keeps playing the way That's not 70%, but just the way he's looked, passing the eye test these first 2 games.
These
he
Russian
keeps doing
QBs, these Russian QBs always seem to find a way to just fall off at like the worst possible time, and like they're great for fantasy purposes, but for NFL purposes they're not. And so like I always just worry. I mean, we see the Ravens in a weird situation with the guy that doesn't have an agent or anything, not giving him a contract, and people are like, well, it's Lamar Jackson though, so like I really want the contract. They did try. They absolutely did.
Contract. He wouldn't take it.
But like, I was getting a little worried about Kyler, when he was, making the demands and stuff, and then he got the contract, and I felt a lot better about him. But
and look
getting
at him
now. Getting into Wentz, it's kind of the same thing, but without the rushing aspect. Like he has an 8% touchdown rate, passing touchdown rate right now. And just to put that into perspective, Tom Brady's career average is 5.5%. Tom Brady's surpassed 7% for a touchdown rate twice in his 22-year career. So, I think we can all agree that Carson Wentz is not going to continue at this rate. And Carson Wentz's career average is, if I can find it, 4.7%. So if we use that 4.7% average, he would be expected to have 4 touchdowns right now instead of 7. That's a pretty big difference, So I think that I sell right now. If you have Carson Wentz, obviously you just bought him in that deal. But
I acknowledge that. I fully expect this is going to be like get him for this year. He's not going to throw 7 touchdowns, works out to like 56 over the year, I think.
Right.
So over times 8. So I don't expect that, but I do think, and I've been saying this all off season too, that Wentz is sneaky good for fantasy. He tends to put up decent numbers. People hate him because in real life he tends to do stupid ass things and he looks horrible at times. But like last year he went 27-7 touchdowns to interceptions, which is not too bad. It's just he blew that game against Jacksonville, and that's what everyone remembers. So I agree. He's not going to be this. He's like QB3, I think I put on the sheet as of right now. Again, going by trade, all my positional ranks are by trade X scoring because I was lazy and just pulled up my trade X because that was the easiest thing to do. So, but yeah, I don't expect that. But I do think, last year he finished as a high end 2, depending on your scoring, could have even been QB12. I could see that as long as he doesn't throw too many picks and get himself benched, which he has a tendency to do. But I think they're going to, everyone keeps saying Howell's going to come in beyond, because he just has Wentz in front of him. A, Wentz is better than you think he is. And B, yes, until they're mathematically eliminated, Heineke's coming in after Wentz if he's that bad. And Howell, for all you people, holding on to hope, Howell has no chance. How many 5th round QBs have ever been anything in the league ever? Like, after we know Tom Brady, Mr. 6th round, or was it 6th, right? End of the 6th round when he was picked. I literally cannot think of anybody that low off the top of my head right now. I can think of some, Kirk Cousins in the 3rd or 4th, a few other guys here and there, Russell Wilson, but 5th rounders are nothing. They have no investment. I didn't mean to get off on a Sam Howell sidetrack here, but that's bugged me all off season too. Is like the people that I don't know. John's probably a big Sam Howell guy, but
I'm with you about I'm with you about the draft capital and everything. I will say I've done some work on what I call interception regression or interception like expectations, and so. Per my studies and everything, Carson Wentz is expected to have 1 more interception than he has right now. So not a huge difference or anything like that, but you were saying, he might get benched if he throws, too many interceptions. He's 2 games, 4 interceptions expected. It's not a great look. The thing is, I think he's the kind of guy that's better for fantasy than he is for real life. And the question is Washington going to be at some point just be like, why don't we go to the rookie because he's so bad for our actual team, and we've lost 7 straight or whatever it is. It's not always because he's just killing our team. But I mean, if they end up having a losing record and they're out of the playoffs, why not look at the rookie? Like that kind of thing.
Right.
They don't have some like massive investment into Carson or anything like that. So I'm not saying that like Sam Howell's going to take his job because he's that much better. I'm just saying like it's definitely not impossible that he does get on the field at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, and I especially like you said, if they lose like 7 in a row, I can agree with that. If we're talking about like a 2-8 team, but I think if they're like 3-5, 5-7, and they're holding on to playoff hopes, I don't think they're bench. Even if they bench Carson, I think it's Heineke that they try and make the playoffs with before they go to Howell's. It's kind of my thinking. I mean, not that they're going to make the playoffs; they're not that good of a team, but they'll probably, they're not going to admit that until they actually can make the playoffs.
He had his Pro Bowl year, his second year with Philly. He had a 7.5% touchdown rate. So, he has done that before, and so even if he has an outlier year like that, it's possible. And like how good did Matt Ryan do in Indy? I mean, and down in Jacksonville, I should say. I mean, Indy hasn't won in Jacksonville in like 18 years. Speaking of Jacksonville, you're talking about 5th round picks that ever did anything. Mark Brunell was a 5th round pick, but that's only because he was a lefty. Otherwise, he would have been a 4th round pick. Let's be honest.
Okay, there's one example there, but from like 25 years ago, or whatever it was. At least, yes, might have been earlier 90s. I'm not sure. But speaking of Jacksonville, my boy, J-Rob, out snapping ETN, out producing ETN. I love to see it. I've been talking about this all the time. I've talked about it on Trade Addicts multiple times already. So I'll let you guys chime in. But I will say before I let you guys chime in, it's exactly, I did not think it would happen this quickly because of the Achilles. But it's what I said before last season, that everyone left J-Rob for dead once they drafted ETN. Like, his value went to nothing. And they acted like, and this offseason too, which it made more sense because of the Achilles, but they acted like ETN's going to be an RB1. I can, just from a pure talent standpoint, I didn't see him as an RB1. And I always knew that if J-Rob was healthy, he was going to be good enough to eat into ETN's work, which is going to keep him from being an RB1. So that's where I was kind of at with them. But I'm just so happy to see him doing well. He had, the first game was more 50-50. I believe the snap share, which makes much sense because they were winning, but was well more in James Robinson's favor this past week. And I just don't think we're ever going to see it at ETN. And I think J-Rob is going to keep it. It's amazing. Like, everyone thought Cam Akers was going to be the Achilles recovery poster child, and it turns out it's James Robinson. So John, just heap praise on James Robinson for me.
Well, I was out because of the Achilles, and and it's just because we haven't seen it, and I was fine just being out for the injury, and I'm fine also being wrong. I mean, he looks healthy, he looks great.
Honestly, I'm just gonna say I wasn't totally in. I was more just he's gonna take away from ETN than I was in because of the Achilles.
Right, and it's just I had too many question marks and it's not like we're sitting here going, "Oh my God, that offense! I have to get a piece of that offense." So I just wasn't like falling over myself to go get James Robinson. I traded him away in a deal where I traded him and Rashad Bateman for Stephon Diggs, and I'm still pretty damn happy about that trade right now. It doesn't really bother me. I've talked way too much about touchdown rate on all these players so far, so I'm not going to talk about his 8.1% touchdown rate. I'm only going to talk about the fact.
I'm glad you didn't bring that up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm only going to talk about the fact that he's averaging 2 receptions per game for I think 6 yards or something like that. And so I think that it's just a little risky if you're really hoping or banking on him. I feel like he's going to be more of a fill-in, injury fill-in, bye week fill-in, that kind of thing, than an actual league winner for you or anything. But honestly, the way that I felt 2 weeks ago was that he was going to be nothing. So the fact that I even think that, I'm still taking the L on James Robinson. I'm just I don't know that he's going to continue at this pace, if you will.
I agree. He's RB6, and I don't think he's going to be a top 6 running back the rest of the year. I will say too, though, he may not have a lot of catches, but he actually did run more routes than ETN last game too. I think it was 16-14. So I thought that was interesting as well. I mean, like I said, the game script favored him running the ball more, but again, route running, I think he was 2 ahead. So that's something to keep an eye on. Last guy on the positive list, and I'm gonna kind of morph right into the negative list too, because we have 2 guys on the same team. I put this guy on here. He hasn't totally busted out. I didn't even put down his position, like wide receiver or whatever number he is, because that's not what's impressive to me. It's just what he's done as a rookie, and I'm already willing to take the L on this guy. If you're listening to Junkies this offseason, I was down-ish on Drake London, but he's impressed me. Like 5 for 74, 886 in his first 2 games. 19 targets, commanding 19 targets. When we're seeing our guy on the first negative part of the list, how worried are we about these guys? Kyle Pitts, only 10 targets and 4 catches through 2 games. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I am willing to take the early L on Drake London. But Scott, were you in on Drake London?
He was my guy.
Okay,
my number 1 receiver.
And
yeah.
How do you see this London Pitts thing? Like, are you worried about Pitts? Because that's what I kind of, for the guys who have started off slow, that's how I titled it on the show sheet. How worried are we? Are you worried about Pitts? And is it part of that because of London? If you are, for at least 2020, not from a dynasty perspective, obviously not, but for 2022 2022.
I mean, I think anytime you have a bad team and a bad quarterback and a coach without a track record, I mean, I think you have to be. The fact that he's been like inline blocking on like 12% of his snaps or whatever the number is, like that's just silly. Like, you don't tow a boat with a Ferrari, like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I understand it, I guess he's still technically a tight end, so I guess sometimes you have to put him in line. But like Cooper Kupp has lined up more than a tight end than Kyle Pitts in 2021. So, why are they reverting? I guess, why they're essentially going away from that so far this year. And I think part of it is because Drake London, like they have very similar skill sets. I think Pitts is probably the better athlete overall, but I mean, London's a big guy. You throw it up, you go get it, right? And I mean, that's kind of the same thing you have with Pitts. So, maybe he's taking away from that a little bit. I don't know that it's a direct correlation. I would think having London with the game he had last week is good for Pitts now, right? Because now defenses are going to have to say, okay, this guy's legit. We're going to have to cover him. We're going to have to double him. We're going to bracket him, whatever they have to do. And that should open things up for Pitts. So, I'm not going to really freak out after 2 weeks, but I will say, Arthur Smith doesn't have a great track record with tight ends. Like, who did Tennessee have? Like Johnny Smith? The guy had like 12 catches a year. He just happened to take a couple like 80 yards for a touchdown. That was the only reason like people knew who he was, but he wasn't heavily utilized. So, yes, you're supposed to adjust to your personnel and all that, but tell me in Tennessee who they had outside of AJ Brown the last like 3 or 4 years when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator there.
Anthony Ferguson
just did not have a lot of talent. So why aren't you using your best guy? If Johnny was so talented, why didn't they use him? So I don't know if it has to do with that, but these are just all the different variables I'm looking at. So no, I'm not super worried about it. I'm not going to like panic trade him. Like I just saw him get traded essentially for like, I think it was CMC and Kelsey. And it was Pitts and like Zach Wilson and like a few random pieces of crap for CMC and Kelsey. And I was like, gee, I mean, that's like all in for 1 year, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's, maybe 2. I'm not ready to do that with my Pitts shares, but I guess, I don't know. Listen, if he's attainable now, I guess it's a buying window, I would say. I mean, I'm not selling him. So I guess if the option is hold, okay, I'll take that, but I'd rather buy than sell, I suppose.
I'm with you, but John, what do you think on the 2 Atlanta guys?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely not selling if I have them. I honestly don't have them anywhere because people were just wild with their prices, in the off season. And I don't think that anyone's going to sell them because they paid like 18 first for them. So like, how could they possibly sell them right now? But I don't think it's all doom and gloom either. Like they've actually ran the same amount of routes, or like Pitts has run one less route than London has. So like it's not like he's sitting there blocking. I think Scott has said that there was a 12% inline rate and all that. So I don't know that it might not be like he might not be utilized the proper way just yet, but he's still running routes. He's still being targeted. And he's still getting air yards. He has a 24.4% air yard market share. It's not terrible by any means. It's not elite or anything. Drake London has a 37.6%. So obviously see that London is commanding targets, commanding air yards, like that kind of thing. From the little bit of those games, because I'm not this big Falcons fan or anything, but I have watched a lot of, it cuts in on Red Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what
it cuts. It cuts in on Red Zone, and it seems like every time I see Kyle Pitts doing anything, he's double teamed. And that's not an excuse for everything, but that's just something that I picked up on in the little bit that I've watched. I haven't done any actual like film analysis or anything like that, but it's definitely not all doom and gloom. And I heard a very smart person, Dwayne McFarland, today talking about any tight end that gets over an 80% route participation rate is essentially going to be a top 12 tight end. Obviously, people had much higher expectations than just top 12. But I think things are going to kind of regress back to like the mean at the very least, to where he's a decent play and not getting you 3 points a week. As far as London, man, like a rookie doing the things that he's doing is great. I was always high on him. He was my wide receiver 3 in the class. I loved Garrett. I had Garrett Wilson over him and Treylon Burks as well. It seems like all of them are going to be hits. We don't even have to figure out we don't have to sit here and argue about who was right or wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
They're all going to be good. But Drake London having a 0.76 Whopper, which is weighted opportunity rate, which basically looks at target share and air yards market share in the offense, and a 0.76 is like elite. That's like Devontae Adams level. That's Justin Jefferson levels. Like it's only 2 games. I don't think he's going to finish the season there or anything like that. But that just seeing that already is great. And so I think that good things are coming for Drake London. But I do think that Kyle Pitts is going to be involved at some point. And now that he has that and he's done big things, maybe that double teaming is going to switch over to Drake London, and now it's going to switch. Pitts is going to be open. So we'll see what happens though.
But yeah, and that's what's impressed me. Like that's why I'm saying I didn't hate London, but I was definitely fairly critical. I was in on the whole separation narrative with London, and I'm turned around so quickly just because you don't see rookies start off like this. Even like Justin Jefferson didn't start off like this. Like Jalen Waddle didn't start off like this right from the get-go coming into the league. Even like I said, even Justin Jefferson, it took him like a month before he started really taking off. And to see him, like I said, he hasn't gone crazy like some like 8 for 160 and 3 touchdowns, but just the 2 very good games he's had to start off his career just impressed me enough that like I said, I had him, I think, as my wide receiver 5 or 6, but I would have him up there. I'd probably have him as my wide receiver 2 right now. I had Wilson also as my 1 coming out, and if I were to draft them now, I would go Wilson 1, and I think London 2. But we'll get into a couple quarterbacks. We got a couple more names on here. I want to try and get this wrapped up so we can get into our Find Me a Trade, because we're going to go. It's already looking like we're going to go our standard 90 minutes, Scott. So,
good thing there's not a game on or anything.
No, yeah, we don't have to worry about that. But 2 quarterbacks that have gotten off. Tom Brady is QB 30. At least this is in Trade Addict scoring. It might be vary a little bit, but he's pretty damn low when you're scoring too. So QB 30. He's got in 2 games. He's got a little over 400 yards and only 2 touchdowns. That's two games. So and the other guy was I'm just gonna lump them together so we can kind of get through this a little quicker. Russell Wilson been very disappointing. Not as low as Brady in terms of fantasy production. He's QB 19. But he had because he was okay against the Seahawks, was kind of putrid against the Texans, 14 for 31, 219 and a touchdown. What the hell is going on with these two guys, John?
Well, as far as Russ, I give any QB the benefit of the doubt when it comes to a new offense, like learning a new offense and implementing that and everything. So I'm definitely not like frantic or losing my mind about it. If anything, I might actually be buying Russ because I bet you could probably get him, fairly low right now. And I mean, the dude's going to be, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but I mean, he's a very good QB.
He's close,
and yeah, he's very close. So I think even last year, if you take, I don't want to take away the injury games or anything like that, but like he wasn't quite right when he came back.
No.
But people were talking, like people act like he was just nothing when he came back. Like he was putting up like 20 to 30 points a game there at the end of the season. And so, like there was a couple of games when he first came back where he was closer to like 15, 20, whatever. But I think things are going to click. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy getting hurt didn't help, but it doesn't seem like it's a long-term, like serious thing. So hopefully he can get back, and he's already building that connection with Cortland Sutton. It seems if they can get on the same page with Alberto and everything, or even just getting like Javonte or Melvin more involved in the passing game, I do think that like Russ is going to be just fine. As far as Brady, I've been concerned about Brady's ever since like the end of last year. We saw the offensive linemen start getting hurt, and Brady has always had, or maybe not always, but like at least in the past 8 years, decade, whatever, like he's had a great offensive line. I think 99% of the reason why he came to Tampa Bay is he saw that offensive line and what it was. And he knew that, Brady's smart enough and good enough to, if he has 3 seconds, he can get the ball to where it needs to go. The problem is he doesn't have 3 seconds anymore. And I really do, like, I'm concerned about Brady. I've been concerned, especially when they, lost even more players this offseason in training camp. I do think it can be good for, like, Leonard Fournette and possibly even Rachaad White, to where it's just a bunch of dump-offs, which we know that Brady loves to do. It could be even more dump-offs than we're used to because he doesn't want to get hit. He's freaking 45 years old.
Yeah.
And so, like, he hikes, he sees anyone in his face, and he just dumps it off to Fournette. I really think that we might see a little transition, and which could help him because obviously, if those guys break it, he's not going to end up as the QB 30. But, man, if you're expecting QB 10 or something like that, you might be in for a world of hurt right now.
Yeah, which I kind of was. I have way too much Brady shares on my teams. But I do. The one thing that worries me, not about Brady, although I guess the line's going to be an issue all year. I do think he's going to be helped a little. He's been missing his weapons for these first 2 games too. He lost Evans for part of the last game. Godwin's been mostly gone. Julio didn't play in week 2. So when he gets some of these guys back, I think that'll help him too. But Russ, one of the things that worries me a little too is I wonder how much of it is coaching because, if you watch that first game, Nathaniel Hackett's doesn't seem to be the best coach out there. And I don't think from a game planning perspective he's that great either. In addition to his decision making at the end of games, so and that could be that's not a problem that's easily solved if coaching is a part of Russ's a down production year. Some of it's definitely on him. You don't go 14 for 31 because of coaching, but I am a little worried about that from the Russ perspective. But I think it will improve for both of them. But like you said, I don't know that either of them is definitely going to be a QB1 this year, which is I would have thought, especially Russ. I was so hyped for Russ coming in this year with Sutton and Jeudy and Javonte and Gordon, and we thought Patrick and Alberto and it's not looking like that's going to happen the way we thought. But we'll finish up here. If you want to chime in on any of the quarterbacks, you can, Scott. But I had to finish up here with, I just put on the sheet anything associated with the Bears. Justin Fields has 28 attempts in 2 games. That's like a half for Joe Flacco at this point. Which is ridiculous. Mooney has 2 catches for 4 yards and is wide receiver 127. And Cole Kmet has 2 consecutive bagels and has not caught a ball this year.
Is this where I say I told you so? What have I been saying for 2 years? If I know anything, it's my own fucking team, okay? If I know anything at all about football, about fantasy, about dynasty, about anything, it's my own team. They're terrible. I've told you this. I've said this over and over and over and over again. And you guys want, oh, Justin Fields, he's so good. Oh my God, have you seen him throw to, Garrett Wilson and, 58 other first round wide receivers? Yeah, you know who he's throwing to now? 4'7" Mooney. Okay. And half of his time played so far was in literally a monsoon, a typhoon.
These numbers,
like, what do you even call that? Like,
they didn't get much better in week 2.
Listen, I've been trying to tell you, so I don't know what else. I don't know what else I can say. I have been trying to tell you. I have sold.
Will
all
Cole
of my
Kmet catch a
Mooney
ball
shares,
this year, Scott?
Like,
will Cole Kmet catch a ball this year?
Well, I sure hope so. He's the only one I really have. I mean, I'm rooting for him because he grew up like 20 minutes away from me, and like he's a good kid, and definitely rooting for him. But like at the end of the day, like we said this from the beginning, right? How is Getsy any different than Hackett? We were just talking about. They just came from the same staff, the same system. All that. This guy's he's never called plays, never even been an OC. And now all of a sudden he has complete control of the offense. Like, what? Like, who are you, dude? I didn't even know who you were 6 months ago. Like,
I almost wonder.
You have no line.
It's been clear that they don't want to help Justin
do?
Fields. I'm almost wondering, are they trying to intentionally sabotage him so they can move on after this year? Because that's how ridiculous it is. Like, you do not win in this league anymore by. And I get the monsoon affected the first game, but they threw more passes in the first game than they did in the second game. It was 17 in the monsoon and 11 in week 2. Like, what the hell are they doing here? In a game they were trailing most of the time.
Doesn't matter.
And the Mooney thing is great because I heard so many people, he's going to be a top 15, 18 guy this year.
And I lauged at every one of them.
I thought that was crazy too. Like, I thought he's a low end 2, high end 3 type of guy. But I just and that's I wanted to mention that too because that's the fallacy of they got to throw to somebody. Like, when you're bad, you don't get possessions. Depending on the pace of the offense, you often don't get enough plays. It doesn't matter if they have to throw to somebody. But any thoughts on how horrible the Bears are before we move on to find me a trade, John?
The Bears are terrible. That's all there needs to be said. I honestly, like, I am a Justin Fields fan. I had hope in the offseason. I was very excited at like the NFL draft that they were going to go get someone, and then they got Velus Jones, and and they did nothing for the O-line. Like, it's just it blows my mind. It might actually be the best thing for Justin Fields if they are trying to sabotage him, because then he can go somewhere else and actually be good and on a good team, because it seems like it's going to take a very long time for them to build. That being said, I think he can still be decent for fantasy. The problem is going to be his consistency. Is he going to be consistent? Because we saw last year on a terrible team with terrible coaching, he still put up QB1 numbers every once in a while. I think he can do it. The question is, are you ever going to be like, are you going to be able to actually start him on those weeks? Are you going to know when those weeks happen?
And they have to let him throw somewhere outside of the teens in terms of attempts.
Right. Well, yeah. If he's throwing 12 attempts a game, then you don't even have to worry about it. But I think we actually have in the Find Me a Trade, we can talk about Fields some more.
Okay, so we will move on now to Find Me a Trade.
Find me a trade.
Okay, so Scott, you want to go through tell us who submitted and go through the settings. I have the league up. I'll get it shared on the screen here. And then I'll do the roster.
Okay. Yep. All right. So this league was submitted by Bobby Bragg at Bragg Bobby on Twitter. Thank you for the submission, Bobby. This league is run on MFL. It is a 10-team. So it's a 10-team, 1 quarterback, non-PPR. Okay, so this is standard scoring. So not only is it not super flex, it's not tight end premium. It's not.
Yeah, this was PPR. A crazy one.
It's
we went back to like 1990 for this one.
Right. 30-man rosters, which is great. That's a
Yes.
300 player pool. I can work with that, but it's start 8. So you're talking 10 teams start 8. That's 80 starters across the league. I mean, most of my leagues start, the shallow ones are like 120, and I have some that are like 156. 14 team 11 start 11 is 156. I mean, that's literally double what we have here. So listen, we always say, play what you enjoy. Like, this is a game, have fun, like that. We are all about that, right? I know for me personally, it's tough to increase luck, like, there's only so much you can do. And so we're going to hopefully give you a few ideas here, Bobby, but let me just say what his info is here, and then you could do the team, Rocky. So he says, this is my second year in the league. I took over an orphan. He knows one other manager in real life, so obviously it's not a lot of people that he knows. I was able to make a few moves and make the playoffs in my first season, and he did get a 3rd place finish. Hopefully you got a payout there. Maybe you got your money back, at least get a free year. In my opinion, I have a competing team. I want to get to the finish line. All future picks are available. Looks like he moved quarterback depth last year, Hurts and Rodgers, which, in my opinion, is a great move. Anytime you can move the quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league is a great thing. But then again, it's non-PPR, right? So those quarterbacks can be important, especially with the shallow starters. Go ahead, Rocky.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. I thought there was a little more there. My bad. Okay, so his roster, I will bring it up here now. He has Justin Fields, who we mentioned earlier, as one of his quarterbacks. His QB1 is probably Matthew Stafford. He also has Marcus Mariota. At running back, he does have some contending type pieces: Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, Kareem Hunt. Also has DeAndre Swift, and then a handful of backups. At wide receiver, he's got CeeDee Lamb. He's got Cooper Kupp. He's got Mike Williams, Devontae Smith, a couple rookies, and George Pickens and Treylon Burks. Also has Michael Gallup. And that's probably it as far as fantasy relevant guys. Isaiah McKenzie on there too. And then at tight end, he has Kyle Pitts, who we also talked about earlier, Noah Fant, and Zach Ertz. Also has Calvin Austin III on his injured reserve at the bottom here. So that's the roster. As Scott alluded to, we kind of had a bit of a tough time on this one. The settings are kind of so unusual for all three of us. I can't remember the last time I played in a standard league. I think it was in the early 2000s. So it was interesting, but John, do you want to go first? Tell us what you came up with.
Sure. First and foremost, I would trade this league for a 12-team Superflex, multi-flex.
That's the trade
league.
we're finding for you.
Yeah. Bring the roster with you, though. I saw this roster and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! All right, this is going to be fun." And then I read the settings. Right,
No, all kidding aside, though, I mean, you do have some nice pieces. I don't know, you're not competing. It's right. I don't know that I'm not like crowning you king right now or anything like that either. So I feel like you are kind of in the middle, which is fine, except for it's a 10-team, standard league, 1 QB league. So being in the middle is not where I want to be in that type of league. Unfortunately, you traded away Jalen Hurts, and that kind of hurts. Now, I think if you had Jalen Hurts, you'd probably be feeling a lot better about your team. Now, I don't know what that trade, got you back. So, maybe it got you Pitts or whatever, and who knows? I have no idea. But honestly, I don't even know exactly how to value a QB in a 1 QB league anymore, just because it's been so long since I've been in a 1 QB league. And I'm not trying to talk down to you or anything like that. I'm just being very honest with you right now. It is difficult for me, but I came up with a trade. Maybe it's crazy because I'm out of that loop, but I want you to go trade for Kyler Murray from You Dumb Punt, because I think you need to get I'm glad I said that the right way.
Yeah, that was great. That worked exactly how they intended.
Yeah. But I think that you need to have if you really want to feel good about your like chances and everything, you need to have like one of the elite QBs, and you would have been in a pretty good situation with Jalen, but you don't have Jalen, so now I'm thinking, what can you do and get someone like somewhat cheap right now? And Kyler's probably the cheapest he's been in quite some time at the very least. So I think that's where I'm going. Now the problem is I don't know exactly how to value Kyler in a 1 QB league. So this might sound crazy, but I'm thinking if you trade DeAndre Swift for Kyler Murray and AJ Dillon, and that might not sound great in like a full PPR league, but in a standard league, AJ Dillon's a pretty damn good running back. Yeah, so I'm thinking it's possible. You might have to add something. I don't quite know, but I definitely think that it's possible, and that maybe you could work around. Obviously you could throw back Stafford, or I'm kind of out on Stafford. Like I just want nothing to do with them. He had the back problems. Now he has the elbow problem. He's so erratic and has those like 3 interception games and everything. I'm perfectly fine sending him away. It's it's not going to hurt you. You'll still have Mariota and Fields as backups.
Yep.
But I think getting Kyler and getting that kind of boost in your QB, because I don't think that things are all doom and gloom for Kyler. I think things are going to be just fine for him. He's going to end up being a top 5 QB when it's all said and done, in my opinion, at the very least. And I think AJ Dillon is going to be just fine in a standard league. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. Things are going to click and get better for the Green Bay offense as well at some point. And I think that could help you where you still have your Cooper Kupp, you have Kyle Pitts if he can come on, CeeDee Lamb, once Dak is back. I think that'll be good enough to where you get the boost from those other positions, and then you can possibly do a little bit better job of contending.
I like that. I especially like the idea of getting Kyler. As I'll alluded to in mine, and we'll get to that shortly. With the 10 teams, with the 8 starters, you want as many studs as possible, and that includes the QB position. And Kyler, to me, is definitely a stud from a fantasy perspective. I just love Swift so much. And even in this format, he's done fairly well. I think he's like the second highest scoring non-QB on this guy's team. So through these first couple games, even without the PPR aspect, that would be my only reservation. Is I do love Swift, but I think it makes sense. I'm kind of with you on the QB value, but since you're getting back Dillon, like I'm not sure how to judge it entirely either. And right. I do like that you threw Dillon in there, and like you said, you're kind of playing to the settings, which is kind of like what we would like to do this exercise for here. Is bring the settings in, bring the roster in, bring the situation in, and all that stuff, and kind of use that to get some macro ideas. So Scott, any thoughts on that one? Then maybe we can go into yours.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Dillon has been my top buy for the past 6 months, basically since last season ended. So, yeah, I'm all about that. I love Swift too. So what I would do is I'd go to one of my PPR leagues and go trade for Swift, and then it makes it a lot easier to trade away this share. But yeah, I mean, find somebody.
This guy might not have 50 leagues though, Scott.
Yeah, well, join another league. But yeah, find somebody who loves Swift and go make a deal, if whether it's that roster or somebody else's. But yeah, I mean, I love that thought process. Using the name value too. Sometimes, I guess Swift is scoring a lot in this league, but still you still have to play your settings. And so I think ultimately fixing the quarterback position, that's also what I did with my trade. So, I mean, I'm all about it.
So what was yours? Tell the people.
Okay. So, essentially, I mentioned earlier, I saw this roster before I knew what the settings were, and I was like very excited. I mean, I like this roster a lot. I think you've done a nice job considering you took over an orphan and, were able to make some moves, and you've got a lot of nice pieces. What you need to do now is try to do these 2-for-1s. You need to try to level up, try to package these guys. So the problem is right now you look at 2 games into it and you go, okay, there's basically 3 0-2 teams. And, looking through the rosters, there's probably 3 or 4 teams that are like, yeah, I'm not winning this year. I'm looking to the future. So you can't really do like an all-out rebuild because you're just way behind the 8 ball there. So what I would try to do is make a couple little moves, maybe use some name value to get some production, see if you can make a run this year. And it's going to take multiple moves. This one trade is not going to fix it. But what it'll do is give you some roster flexibility to be able to go any which way. So you can, as the season goes on, if you lose the next 3, then maybe you start selling off some of these pieces. So ultimately, what I did here was trade Justin Fields, George Pickens, and Kyle Pitts to Levi's diaper for Trey Lance, T. Higgins, and George Kittle.
So little trades.
This yeah. Well, this particular team has they obviously just lost Lance. They have Higgins and Chase, but they also have Burrow. So I don't know if that was intentional of having like that triple stack essentially. I'm not a huge fan of that necessarily. I mean, that's too much on one team, especially when there's 8 starters. I mean, that's a huge percentage of your lineup. One bad game or one injury can kind of really derail it. So again, it's going to depend on that manager. But if you can get a guy like Higgins in your lineup, and there's some excitement around Pickens, especially, after that catch tonight, right? And the whole preseason and everything. And then moving Pitts to Kittle, like, obviously, I mean, I don't love that, to be honest with you, long-term value-wise. But in this league, I mean, we're looking for, production. We're looking for points. And we know what Kittle can do, especially with Jimmy G this year. So I think his value might rebound a little bit from it's just been down with the uncertainty with Trey Lance. But then it gives you that future stack, too, of Lance and Kittle, and just gives you another option for the future with Trey Lance. In the meantime, you could make another trade for someone else because Fields is not going to get it done for you this year. Even if you believe in him long term, that's fine. But this year, he's not going to get it done for you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Again, like we were saying earlier, he can have some good games, but inconsistency, we don't know when do you mix and match with Stafford. It's just not going to get it done. So I'd be looking to make another trade to find another quarterback there later. And one of the things you can do is you have like 17 wide receivers on your roster of 30. So, when half your roster is wide receivers and you're only going to ever start 3, maybe 4 max, you want to start calling some of those guys, Jamison Crowder, Will Fuller, Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, like those guys. I don't even know if you can get anything, but offer them out with a 4th and try to get a 3rd, or a 3rd and try to get a 2nd, like anything you can get for those guys, and just churn them, get them off your roster, get more running backs, even guys like Dearness Johnson or, Jeff Wilson, those guys that just give you 1 or 2 games a year that when you plug them in your flex, exactly what you're getting from them. So from an overall strategy, that's what I'd like you to do with this roster.
I like that one a lot. I think that the value is like perfect there with the Pitt's kind of over Kittle, and Pickens is a hot young guy, but Higgins is also a really good young receiver, and you're getting a little upgraded quarterback potentially down the road.
Maybe.
Yeah, who knows? But it doesn't even matter all that much in a 1 QB.
Right.
So,
Right. Going for upside.
And as I kind of mentioned in my trade, which also involves Pitts and also involves Levi's diaper, actually, that I'm not sure, especially for this season specifically, that Pitts has as much value. In this kind of league, you want yards and touchdowns, and through his career now, he's got 1 touchdown. Now we hope that's going to change, but I don't know that Atlanta's scoring a ton of touchdowns this year. So, they've been okay through the first couple games, but I wouldn't expect them to be, with Mariota and Ritter, to be piling up the scores. And excuse me, so far, Pitts hasn't been piling up the yards either. So, whatever catches he get isn't going to matter. So, I kind of think he's got the name, but he's maybe a little overvalued if you're thinking of him that way in this league. I do think he's going to be very good eventually, and it's not going to matter that he's not, getting PPR points or tight end premium points, but that definitely does help his value. So, John, any thoughts on that one? And then I'll finish up with mine.
Yeah, I love utilizing Pickens, especially if that catch, does get him some more hype. So I like that. I'm so out on George Kittle that like I don't know if I can get behind the trade.
I get it.
I really don't, because
get
I do believe in Pitt's talent. I don't. Once again, I wasn't the guy that's like, oh my god, he's the 101 in drafts and all that kind of stuff. But like, I think he's a good player that is going to be a good tight end that can help you in that position and everything. So like, I don't want to just give him away either. I'm so out on Kittle. I mean, he's already missed 2 games.
I know.
He's going to miss more. It's going to happen. I hate it. I hate it. I honestly, I don't think I've ever had Kittle on a team because I've just always felt that way.
I have very few shares. I'm with you.
I've taken over like an orphan or two. And the second I see it, he's gone. He's just gone.
He's
so
always been very boom bust too.
Yeah. I don't hate the values of the trade or anything like that. I don't think it was an idiotic offer for him to make. I'm just so out on Kittle that I don't think I can put my seal of approval on it.
That's totally fair. Totally fair.
And like I said, mine also involves Pitts going to the same team, but mine's a lot simpler. Maybe not smaller because it's 2 major names we're talking about here. But and this is going to that Levi Stipers team. It was Kyle Pitts for Jamar Chase, just straight up. And it's basically, it kind of depends on how this guy views his season, because we talked about it. He's 0-2. I think we might have talked about this even more actually before the show when we were talking about the trade. But he's 0-2, but he's got a very good team. So it depends on how he's looking at that. If he's thinking, well, it's only 2 games. I'm the best team in this league. I don't want to trade Jamar Chase for a guy who's probably going to help me more in 23 and beyond in Pitts. But he's definitely got a kind of youth move. He's got a lot of young guys on his team, so it might be something he's interested in. He's also got multiple first-round picks, and I kind of figured, maybe he could look at this as he's building a juggernaut for 23. When Pitts truly probably breaks out, he gets his 2 23 first-rounders, and this is a 10-team league, so those are 2 top 10 picks at worst. So and with only the 10 teams and 8 starters, I mentioned the stud thing earlier. You're still getting a stud, and you're getting a stud this year, whereas Pitts we're hoping a future stud. Chase, we know, is a stud. Chase, I feel, also plays a little more to the settings, like I had mentioned earlier. He's not what you think. I mean, he's going to pile up some catches, but we don't think of Chase as a massive PPR guy. He's yardage and touchdowns, which is what you want in this league, yardage and touchdowns. So, and you don't get older in this trade. So I like we've all talked about, I had a tough time coming up with something for this one. And the other thing was too is that if I'm going to be studless at any position, I kind of like doing it at tight end in this league. You don't have any premium, you don't have any PPR,
right?
So just get a guy like he still has Ertz, hope for some touchdowns, hope for some spike yardage games. There's only maybe 2 great tight ends in the league anyway. So for fantasy or in general. So that's the one position I'd be fine going studless anyway when I'm trying to build my 8 starter lineup. So that's what I figured. Just like I said, I had a tough time. This is what I came up with. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, no, obviously we honed in on the same team there because I think we're probably looking at the 0-2 thing, right? And
that's what I was thinking.
I mean, normally, like for me to trade Pitts, I would need to get a Chase back. The only, for me, it was just more of like non-premium, and I just was like, whatever, I'd be willing to do it if I can make everything else work. But yeah, I like that better as far as getting that stud back. Because John obviously mentioned the question marks with Kittle and then even Trey Lance and all that, right? So yeah, just getting Chase back. I don't think you can go wrong. Like, is there any trade where you
get Chase
are
and it's
sad
bad
about getting Chase? Like, you know what I
Never.
mean? So yeah, even giving up Pitts like that is probably the one scenario I would consider trading Pitts in just about any league.
Okay, so finish us up, John. Any thoughts on that last one?
Honestly, I love the idea of it. The only thing I would question at this point is, will Pitts even get Chase at this point? Pitts has started off very slow.
True.
And
That's true.
Chase is Chase. So I think you might actually have to add a little bit at this point, and then you know, as the team
I would even be
owner,
okay adding a little bit.
yeah, I was actually thinking, like, what if you threw George Pickens in? You know, like that
you
might
go.
get it done, and you know, like I'd be perfectly fine doing that. You know, and it looks like you're giving away another stud or whatever. I don't think Pickens is going to be that, or at least not yet. Like he could be. I think it's going to take time, especially with that whole situation. I mean,
Yes.
I don't think, you know, Kenny Pickett coming in is all of a sudden going to be the savior. He's still a rookie QB and all that, and then, you know, if he's not even the long-term option, then it's going to be a different rookie QB or another retread or whatever. So there's a lot up in the air in Pittsburgh. So I'm perfectly fine selling Pickens high or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I just wonder if you can get Chase straight up. That'd be the only question. But I think that is the right direction to go, is to get Chase, because I think it will help your team a little bit more than Pitts probably will this year. And then, you know, hopefully that would help you, you know, and then make both trades. Go get you Kyler, go get you Pitts, and then you'll really be looking good.
Yeah, and especially if the guy on the other
Chase,
end is
not Pitts.
Yeah, Chase is factoring in the settings too. Like I said, I think that the settings do kind of decrease Pitts' value a little bit without the tight end premium and all that stuff. So, but good stuff, good trades. Hopefully this helps you, Bobby. That's going to pretty much finish us up now. I do want to thank, if you were listening, I didn't make a big deal of it as I did them, but we did. Hopefully it came through in the stream here. But we had a couple of drops from our good friend Brian Haar, formerly of the Trade Addicts podcast. Dropped him in there. Let us know what you think. You know, Scott said we're just going to do them regardless of whether you guys like him or not. But I liked them, and we actually did these back in the day, like back before Scott, back before Andrew, and it was
Early
me
days.
and Dustin. Yeah, Dustin got Brian to record some of these, and then we never really used them very much. We did them a few times, and then they were left for dead. And I you know, after 2.5 years, I finally figured out how to put them in the StreamYard. So I figured, let's give it a try. So you can let us know what you think. But I mainly wanted to mention that just so I could give a shout out to Brian. I wanted to thank him for that, because they were fun to throw in there. And then, of course, I want to thank John for coming on tonight. It's been a blast. Like you said, we did our usual 90 minutes. Hopefully you're not too tired, John. But I want to thank you for coming on, and I want you to, you know, plug away your podcast, anything else you want to tell the people about, your Twitter handle, all that good stuff.
No, I'm definitely not tired. Had a lot of fun. I love talking football, and especially trades and stuff like that. I love doing all that kind of stuff. So anybody ever has a trade question or anything, slide in the DMs. I'm always there to help. I am the host of the Monocle Dynasty podcast, the Devi Devotional, the Full Tilt Devi podcast. If you haven't already figured it out, I like to talk. So I talk about Devi and Dynasty and all that kind of good stuff. I also have a Patreon where I created a bunch of different tools, a start sit tool, trade calculator, and a DFS tool that helps you like set the best like stacking lineups and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I'm tweaking those and having a lot of fun with that. And people are you know, sending me their lineups, and you know, it's really been cool. So if you want to check all that out, you can. It's only a few bucks a month. If not, like I said, just slide in the DMs. I'm always willing to talk for free too. So yeah, you can find me on any of those pods, on Twitter, on Patreon, or just about anywhere else.
And you had me at Dave Wright, basically. Any correlation to Dave Wright, FF Spaceman, for those of you that know on Twitter. I mean, oh man,
yeah,
the database.
Yeah, that's my boy. I help him with the database because I'm always in there, and like not to say that there's not a bunch of errors or anything, but like randomly I'll find like just a random error, because when you're dealing with that many numbers and formulas and everything, like shit happens. And so now I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta, you know, this doesn't look right. You know, somebody doesn't have 150%, you know, route participation rate or whatever it is, and you know, he's like, oh yep, okay, that didn't get copied right, like that kind of thing. So I help him out with that, and awesome. But I also utilize all of that data. So anyone that like wants to, you know, get better at this, or you know, just have more information at their hands, definitely check out Dave Wright at @FF_Spaceman. on Twitter, and all of his Patreon and everything. Some of it's free, some of it's not, but there's a lot of info there.
Yeah, and also make sure you're checking out all of John's podcasts. I love his stuff. I love talking to John. He's, he knows a whole bunch about this stuff. He's probably way smarter than me. So go give him a listen. But we'll finish up here. I'm at Dynasty FF Addict. Scott's at Scott_Sidlow. The pod is at Dynasty Junkies. I'm not giving the other host handles. We have too many damn hosts. They'll give you their handles next time they're on. Also, make sure you're following the DAP Network at DAP_network. Follow us, follow the DAP Network. Also on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, and you can see us when we go live. You can see Fantasy Timeline when they go live. Occasionally, Trade Addicts goes live. So make sure you're following all things DAP Network, Twitter, YouTube, the podcast feed, all that stuff. And also, please make sure you give us, if you just happen to stumble upon this, please subscribe if you like what you heard, and definitely give us a rating and review, preferably a good one. But even if it's a bad one, let us know what we can do better than, so we can make it a good one. But Scott, I think that's going to finish up all I got to ramble on about at the end of the show here. So why don't you take us out?
Yep, and keep those find me a trade submissions coming. We just posted on Twitter the link, so it's a real easy sheet you fill out, put in your information, and then we'll reach out to you as a follow-up. We'll put you in the spreadsheet and we'll get you going. Definitely get some more submissions here. We can definitely help a lot of people as we get into the season, get some more information. And it's always a good time. It's the best part. We love when our guests get involved. So again, thanks to John for that. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, or if you're listening, we appreciate you. Thanks again to Manscaped for sponsoring the show. Again, code Junkies for 20% off and free worldwide shipping. For at DynastyCoachA, for at Dynasty FF Addict. I'm at Scott_Sidlow. Junkies out.